Hello my dear friends, and welcome back to another video. So ever since Andor episode 5 The Axe gets released, we've been discussing various connections and references in the episode. Yesterday we spoke about the reference to Kessel and the Wookiees, but today we've got something different. So as we know, Tony Gilroy is very sly when it comes to Easter eggs and subtleties. Well, today we've got another one. This is something we don't actually learn in the episode, but rather something that was revealed in a podcast. On the Ringer's The Watch podcast, they recently interviewed Ebon Moss-Backrack. At the 58-minute mark, he reveals that one of Skeen's blasters in the show is actually Greedo's blaster that he uses in A New Hope when being shot by Han Solo. The actor says he doesn't know how Greedo eventually ends up with it, but it is the blaster, not just the same model, the actual one. Now this is pretty huge, because it means that Tony Gilroy probably told him about that link, and it might feature on later in the show. For him to have been told that Greedo gets a hold of it means that we might see that at some stage later in season 1, or more likely in season 2. Either we run into Jabba's most notorious Rodian bounty hunter, or Vel's partisans end up on Tatooine, and somehow Greedo gets a hold of it there. I must admit though, my dear Mandalorians, this is not a connection I would have ever thought would make its way into a show like this. But it's fascinating to me that Ebon, who plays Skeen, knows about it and was given some context by Gilroy, who clearly has thought it through. I mean, imagine if we run into Greedo, or maybe even Greedo with Han and Chewie, as the three characters were forced to work together pre A New Hope in the recent comics. That would be incredible, and despite Tony saying he's against fan service, he's already clearly shown us that he doesn't really mind it with the sheer amount of Easter eggs we've had in the show already. And even if popular characters do show up, if they fit the plot and the narrative, then technically it's not fan service. Now, in case you don't know, Greedo's blaster was a DT-12 heavy pistol, which is a blaster worth about 900 credits. I really hope we do see it on screen and how Greedo got a hold of it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, guys. Now, when it comes to Greedo, I've often found he's not a character that's spoken about enough. Outside of the context of who shot first, and by the way it was Han, Greedo does not come up a lot, so I thought I'd take this opportunity to speak a little bit about his career and where he is during the Andor show. I'm not saying he is going to show up, but if Skeen's blaster has a story that will eventually connect to the character, then a deep dive only makes sense. So before his death in A New Hope, Greedo was employed by Jabba the Hutt, and he'd been working for Jabba since the early days of the Clone Wars. At some point during the war, he was hired by the Trade Federation to kidnap Chairman Papanoida's daughters, Shea Amanwe and Shi Ikwe, to use as leverage for Pantora to join the CIS. Shea struck Greedo with an idol, covering its base with the Rodian's green blood. After finding the blood sample while investigating his daughter's kidnapping, Chairman Papanoida and his son Ion tracked down the bounty hunter to Jabba's palace and presented the evidence to Jabba, who then forced Greedo to bring the Pantorans to the cantina in Mos Eisley, where Shea was being held. In the ensuing firefight, Greedo managed to slip away while the family gunned down the rest of Shea's captors. Now, chronologically, we don't see much of Greedo again until the 2015 run of Star Wars comics, where during Obi-Wan's exile on Tatooine, Greedo gets himself into some mischief with an unnamed Celestin down the back alley of the Mos Eisley cantina. Not much else is known about him from that time, other than the fact that he was renowned across the desert planet for being ruthless. We do see more of his pre-A New Hope shenanigans in the 2017 book Not For Nothing. While continuing his work for Jabba the Hutt, Greedo captured Figrin Dan of Figrin Dan and the Modal Nodes and delivered him to Jabba, after which Dan and his band entered into indentured servitude under Jabba, due to Dan being in heavy debt to him. So during their time there, the group kept tabs on Greedo using their superior hearing abilities, seeing how he would bring in small-time criminals, help them to escape, then bring them back to recollect the bounty, and at some point, they caught Greedo bringing in an unfortunate Jawa 3 times. Upon gaining enough money to free themselves, the Cantina band told Jabba of these events, which made him furious, and this resulted in a grudge between Greedo and the band. So in the recent Han Solo and Chewbacca comics, Jabba pairs Greedo with the two, and they have to go on a special mission, retrieving a Verilic's urn, which contained the ashes of Jabba's most hated rival. The reward for the urn was 1 million credits, which was to be split between the hired hunters. So once they arrived on Corellia, Greedo brought Solo and Chewie to the planet's Pearl District. He told them that the urn was being kept safe within the penthouse of Augustus Graves, Chief Executive Officer of the Corellian Engineering Corporation. As they got to work, Greedo noticed a few expensive items and picked one of them up. He was then confronted by Han, who informed him the safe was empty and his intel was wrong. Noticing the item Greedo was holding, Solo reminded him not to touch anything. Greedo remarked it was at least worth 10,000 credits before Solo pointed out it was tagged with an MSX tracker. An alarm then sounded throughout the building, and the three of them ran for the turbo lift, only to be met by a group of armed security guards. Greedo fired at the guards, while Han Solo and Chewbacca ran for the Falcon, and they left Greedo on Corellia. Basically the beginning of their feud. A few years later, Jabba the Hutt assigned Greedo the task of tracking down Han Solo, as the smuggler was in a lot of debt. The rest is history, but Greedo's story in the expanded universe is similarly just as fascinating. My personal favourite story of his comes from Tales from the Mos Eisley Cantina, a collection of short stories published in 1995, when Star Wars Legends material was thriving. Greedo's tale in the book humanises the bounty hunter to a great extent, and we learn a little bit about his backstory and childhood, how sometimes he looked up at the Tatooine sky and regretted being a bounty hunter, as he longed to return to his homeworld. So really awesome stuff, a truly underrated character. So maybe we're going to see the blaster in the show, and possibly how Greedo gets a hold of it. And so now, my dear friends, in Star Wars news, we have a new poster for the Andor show, which is a stunning piece of artwork, another one that depicts the grittiness of the show in a strikingly vivid way. And now that we're coming up to the halfway point of season 1, let's take a look at the results of the most recent community post. I asked you guys, what did you think of Andor episode 5? Now, I've seen some of the comments over the last few days, and when it comes to episode 5 specifically, ignoring the feedback of the previous 4, there was the most diversity in opinions for this one. A lot of folks just didn't dig it, so let's take a look. 29% of the 6,000 people who voted said it was awesome, 40% said it was good, so combined we have a 69% majority of the people who voted who enjoyed the episode, and yes, 69, very funny. 18% said it was okay, 3% said it was awful, and 10% voted that they're not watching Andor. Now, in some of the comments here, some people said they wanted other options, but the aim was just to get a broad consensus. Now, for other shows, the I'm not watching option has been a lot lower than for Andor, and I've seen a couple of other YouTubers point out that a big percentage of Star Wars fans are just not interested in Andor on the whole. Now, you wouldn't know it from looking at social media and general reception to the show, but there are definitely fans out there who are just waiting for the Mandalorian Season 3, the Ahsoka show, and bigger series about bigger characters. That's fair enough, I can see why it's not everyone's cup of tea. Personally, I'm very much enjoying the Andor series. It's an overused term, but I love the slow burn feel, the big build up and the tension. I'm just hoping the later payoffs are worth it. But for me, and I know a lot of others who've said it, the writing on the show is particularly strong. But I do think it's too early to comment on the structure and the overall show. Let's see how it plays out. We're coming up to halfway, and next week's episode should give us a good indication. That's just my perspective though. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And I suppose the question of the day, what would you like to see from the rest of the first season? If you enjoyed this video, guys, as always, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up. Why not subscribe if you're new? And I'll see you in the next video. May the Force be with you always. I'm Star Wars Meg. Have a good one.